I have said it often, and I will say it again. No outward transaction determines your wealth. It is not what you spend by hand that governs your supply, but what you authorize in spirit. Man thinks he pays with currency, but in truth, he pays with command. He believes he is broke because of what left his account. But I tell you, the account only reflects what he declared long before. His real spending occurred in the invisible, and by the time the bill came due, the law had already confirmed it. This is a spiritual economy, not a mechanical one. You are not here to merely manage money. You are here to govern the unseen forces that move it, and those forces take their cue from your voice, your tone, your word. That word may not have been loud, it may not have been spoken aloud, but if it was said within, and if it was believed, it was enough. Let me be clear. Your subconscious does not wait for you to write a check. It does not need to see you swipe a card. It begins the transaction the moment you say, "I'm not sure I can afford this." The moment you sigh with dread as you approach the register. The moment you flinch before clicking pay now. These are not innocent gestures. They are not mere reactions. They are instructions. They are signatures on invisible documents, and the law receives them as such. People often ask me why their money always seems to fall short, why it comes in only to vanish again. And I ask them, what did you speak into your life before the money came? What tone trained your outcome before the opportunity arrived? Most cannot answer because most are not listening to themselves. They hear the world, they hear the numbers, but they do not hear the echo of their own inner speech, the subtle phrases they repeat when no one is listening. And yet, that echo is what the law obeys. You must understand this. Your finances are not responding to your effort. They are responding to your framework. That framework is built in the realm of word and thought. And thought alone is not creative unless it is backed by spiritual authority. A fearful thought is like a letter never mailed. But the moment it is spoken or deeply believed, it is sealed. And once sealed, the law must fulfill it. This is why I caution so strongly against careless language. The subconscious has no humor. It takes no sarcasm. It does not wait for context. It simply records. It obeys. It repeats. When you say, "I always lose money somehow," it hears. So let it be. When you whisper, "This always happens to me," the law sees that as faith and accelerates it. You may not mean it, you may say it in jest, but the law is not interested in your mood. It is only bound by your word. And it is not only words of defeat that authorize loss. Even your tone can spend. The way you mutter "we'll see" with a slight drop in hope, that is a form of withdrawal. The moment you hesitate before saying yes to a righteous expense, that hesitation can become a spiritual block. Your entire vibrational structure carries authority. Your body language speaks as loudly as your mouth, and if your gestures contradict the law, the result will too. I have seen men tithe with fear and reap nothing. I have seen women give with trembling hands and wonder why nothing multiplies. I have seen generous people remain poor, not because they lacked goodness, but because they never gave from spiritual identity. Their giving was not accompanied by spiritual speech. Their spending was not preceded by lawful decree. And so the action remained hollow. You cannot spend in fear and receive in faith. You cannot withdraw with worry and expect return with confidence. The transaction must begin in alignment. It must begin in truth. That truth is not how much you have. It is how much authority you carry in your command. And that command must not plead. It must not seek permission. It must speak like law. The universe being ordered does not respond to emotional crisis. It does not react to desperation. It moves when the voice of authority moves. That authority comes not from personality but from positioning. And you position yourself rightly only when you stand in spiritual law. I once knew a woman who always said, "Money comes in and goes out like water." She said it every week. It became a joke among her friends, but it was not a joke to the law. Her supply followed the exact rhythm of her speech. She would receive and she would lose. Not because of fate or misfortune, but because she instructed it to happen that way. She believed her pattern, then she confirmed it, then she watched it play out. It is not superstition to say that words create reality. It is spiritual physics. The spoken word is not a symbol, it is a seal. It sets structure into motion. That motion becomes manifestation. That manifestation becomes what you call your life. And so I ask again, what have you been saying? What tone have you trained your finances to obey? The law does not judge you, but it does mirror you. And what you do not revise in word, you will be forced to relive in form. This is not punishment, it is precision. And once you understand that precision, you are no longer a victim of money's behavior. You are its director. Speak now, not in apology but in mastery. Speak as the steward of divine supply. Let your words spend ahead of your hand, and spend not in worry but in wisdom. Say what you mean. Mean what you say. And say it as one who knows the law, is already listening. I have long taught that man's external life is but a faithful replica of his inner records. The world you walk in is a photograph of what you once said in secret. And the account you manage in the physical, your income, your expenses, your so-called limitations, is merely the final entry in a long, invisible ledger that your subconscious has been maintaining since you first learned to speak. There is a logbook within you. You do not see it, but it sees you. It hears everything. It tallies not only your declarations, but your tone, your feeling, your expectation, and most importantly, it remembers. It is not forgetful like your conscious mind. It does not sleep, it does not rationalize, it only records, it only obeys. Every time you said, "We're barely making it this month," it wrote that down as law. Every time you repeated, "Something always comes up and ruins the plan," it entered that as a standing order. Even the phrases you learned from others, from your mother counting coins with worry, from your father tightening his jaw before every bill, those were recorded before you ever had the power to edit them. And now, they speak as you. They spend as you. They command in your name. People do not realize that their financial life is not chaotic. It is organized, but it is organized by what they never reviewed. You would not let a stranger run your bank account. Yet you have allowed an unexamined past to run the most important account of all, your spiritual ledger. The subconscious is that accountant. But it cannot audit itself. It must be re-instructed by conscious law. Until then, it will continue to repeat its old formula, and that formula is always faithful to what it has heard most often. You may affirm wealth 10 times a day, but if you have lived 20 years under the rule of lack, guess which command carries more weight? The subconscious does not count the loudest voice, it counts the most repeated voice. And if that voice was born in fear, it will continue to produce outcomes that confirm that fear. You say, "But I'm trying." I know. But the law does not move because you try, it moves because you instruct. The subconscious does not respond to effort, it responds to authority, and most of your authority has been spent issuing orders you don't remember giving. You may walk into a store and tell yourself, "I can buy this." But if 10,000 times before you have said, "This is too much," or "I shouldn't spend on myself," your present words are drowned by a sea of past instruction. The old order still stands, and until it is canceled, revoked, demolished by spiritual word of higher power, it will continue to operate. Let me speak plainly. Your spending is not about money. It is about what your subconscious has been ordered to protect, to expect, and to fulfill. And if you have not revised that inner order, then your outer experience is simply following protocol. Many people are surprised when sudden income disappears. They say, "I thought I was doing better. Why did it vanish?" The answer is simple. The subconscious spent it before you did. The old pattern instructed the law to clear it out, because you were never meant to have too much. Because too much violates an old family rule, or an old religious fear, or a social imprint that says wealth is dangerous, selfish, or fleeting. And so the law, in its perfect obedience, honored the subconscious decree. This is why financial transformation does not begin in numbers. It begins in language. It begins in your willingness to search the records, to review the archive of speech and belief that has been running your life behind a curtain of familiarity. The voice that says, "This is just how I've always been," is not your voice, it is the voice of programming. And that programming can be changed, but not by hoping, not by wishing, not even by working harder. It can only be changed by a new voice, speaking with divine authority, issuing a new decree to the accountant within. I once guided a woman who could not keep $1 in her wallet. The moment she received, she would unconsciously spend, not out of joy, but out of anxiety. Not out of freedom, but out of a hidden agreement that said, "If I don't spend it fast, it will be taken from me." She had seen her parents hoard in fear, only to lose everything during a crisis. Her subconscious recorded that event as law, and ever since it had been writing checks to the void. She did not spend from pleasure, she spent from prophecy. Only when she spoke a new command, aloud and with faith, "Divine supply is permanent. What I receive, I retain. What I bless, I increase," did the pattern begin to break. Not instantly, but lawfully. Not with force, but with re-instruction. Because once the subconscious receives new law, it stops defaulting to the old one. You must understand that your mind is a courtroom, and your subconscious is the bailiff. It enforces the last spoken judgment. If the last judgment you gave was, "I always mess this up," then that is the sentence being carried out right now. But if you issue a new ruling, "From this moment, I only spend under grace and perfect direction," then the bailiff must switch orders. The pattern must shift. But beware, this is not a one-time utterance. The old logbook is thick. It may take weeks, even months, of new speech to overwrite the old script. Not because the law is slow, but because your inner court must be restructured. The walls must hear new sound. The echoes must change tone. And most importantly, your own voice must become trustworthy again. That is why I do not tell you to simply believe. I tell you to speak, because speech trains belief. Speech rewrites memory. Speech reorganizes reality. Your words are not decorations, they are directions. And the subconscious does not follow intention, it follows instruction. From this moment, begin to audit the phrases that pass through your lips. Begin to question every financial story you tell. And if any sentence begins with fear, revoke it. If it carries shame, dismantle it. If it echoes lack, replace it. For your subconscious is not your enemy. It is your servant. But a servant left without supervision will serve the wrong master, and the wrong master is always the past. Speak now, not as a reaction, but as a ruler. Issue a new decree. Say it slowly, say it clearly, say it until the old logbook can no longer compete. That is how wealth begins, not by earning, but by editing the invisible archive. There is a law I have come to know well, because it governs more lives than most would dare admit. Your words spend before your wallet does. The transaction begins not in the marketplace, not in the bank, but in the atmosphere your voice creates. And the universe, being obedient, moves only when it hears instruction. Not pleading, not hoping, but lawful instruction. Most people speak as if they are describing the truth, when in fact they are prescribing it. This will be expensive, they say, not realizing that they have just opened a doorway to cost, not as reality but as enforcement. They think they are being honest, but the law does not hear honesty. It hears authorship, and you are always authoring, either consciously with intention or unconsciously with inherited phrasing. It is astonishing how casually man speaks of lack, as if speaking of famine does not feed it, as if declaring strain does not multiply it. They say, it's always something, and so it is. They sigh before they spend, they grimace before they give, and they wonder why their finances carry a flavor of loss, even in seasons of gain. It is because their tongue moves faster than their awareness. Their vibration spends long before their hand does. Let me be plain. The universe is not triggered by paper, nor by coin. It is triggered by current, and current is generated by tone. If you say, I guess I'll buy it, but I probably shouldn't. The law does not wait for your inner conflict to resolve. It enacts the vibration that sounded last. And what sounded last was resistance, not confidence. Scarcity, not joy. The purchase may go through, but the spiritual invoice will reflect the tone. And that tone always returns in form. Do not be deceived. Money does not move alone. It follows tone. That is why two people can spend the same amount and reap entirely different outcomes. One spent with spiritual command, with blessing, with conscious agreement, and received peace. The other spent with dread, with sarcasm, with the vibration of fear, and received loss, leakage, confusion. The difference was not in the dollar. The difference was in the decree. When I hear someone say, let's hope this doesn't bankrupt me, I do not laugh. I cringe. For the law does not laugh. It takes no offense, but it also takes no pause. It simply registers the statement, checks for belief, and if belief is found, it begins execution. The law is neither cruel nor compassionate. It is exact, and that exactness is what makes it holy. It does not choose whom to bless. It simply fulfills the dominant tone. I once worked with a man who tithed out of obedience, but always declared it comes back slow. That was his phrase. He said it often, as if it were a proverb. It comes back slow. And so it did. Not because the tithe was wrong, but because the tone overruled the act. The law followed his voice, not his good intention. And until he revised that voice, his seed could not find fast ground. This is the tragedy of spiritual ignorance. People believe they are doing the right thing while saying the wrong thing. They meditate on abundance, but whisper about ruin. They visualize checks arriving, but sigh in resignation when bills appear. The law hears the sigh, not the vision. It follows the spoken word, not the silent wish, and every sigh of disbelief cancels a decree of faith. That is why I train my students to speak before they spend, not just as habit, but as legal preparation. Before you give, declare, this seed multiplies in divine cycles. Before you pay, affirm, this payment clears all channels for return. Before you invest, speak, my money is under spiritual jurisdiction and it obeys divine law. These are not affirmations of hope, they are transactions of structure. And when spoken with command, they shift the entire atmosphere. But you cannot speak such things with a wavering voice. You cannot speak them while secretly doubting their power. The law does not obey volume, but it does require certainty, and that certainty must be trained. Just as a pianist trains her fingers or a soldier trains his posture, so must the spiritual man train his voice to issue tone that cannot be overruled by fear. You must remember, your words are receipts. They prove what you have believed. And if your spiritual receipts are stamped with statements like, there's never enough, I always run short, I'm not good with money, then you are carrying proof of a belief system that must be dissolved, replaced, erased by lawful decree. When I began to train my voice, I noticed how many careless phrases I had inherited. I had absorbed them from conversations, from culture, even from scripture misunderstood. Money is the root of all evil, I heard whispered in churches, but I came to understand it is not money that corrupts, it is the fear of it, the shame around it, the lies told about it. And all of these enter through speech. That is why your tongue must become your instrument of alignment. Not your defense, not your excuse, but your alignment. You must teach it to say only what you intend to see. You must teach it to pause before it prophesies, and if it has already prophesied wrongly, you must command it to reverse the word. This is not superstition, this is spiritual economy. A man does not go to court hoping to be understood. He comes with legal evidence delivered in the correct language. So must you speak to the law, not casually, not emotionally, but rightly, with form, with clarity, with intention. You are not required to be loud. You are required to be lawful. And lawfulness in speech is what creates substance in form. Before your next expense, I ask you, what word are you spending? What sentence are you signing? What vibration are you attaching to this outgoing flow? For the law has already begun recording, and the pattern it builds will not reflect your wish. It will reflect your word. There is a question more powerful than how much money do I have? It is this: who do I believe I am when I spend? For the law does not respond to your transaction. It responds to your identity. And identity is not what you write on a form. It is not your profession, your background, or even your faith. It is the tone your spirit holds when it speaks. It is the unseen self you confirm with every word, every sigh, every yes or no around money. That tone, that image, that self-permission, that is what trains your wallet. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you believe yourself to be. And every time you spend, you are not just paying a vendor, you are revealing your current belief about yourself. You are saying, this is the kind of person I am. This is what someone like me expects. This is how someone like me lives. And the law listens, not to your bank balance, but to the name behind your vibration. I have seen people live in wealth while speaking as beggars. I have seen people with great supply still operate under the tone of unworthiness. They whisper when they pay. They flinch when they give. They expect delay. They expect to be shortchanged. They expect something to go wrong. And because their identity is still shaped by lack, their experience obeys accordingly. Not because they deserve less, but because they command from a position of lesser authority. Let me tell you plainly, Every transaction is a declaration of who you think you are. And if you believe yourself to be small, undeserving, uncertain, fearful, then the law must confirm that version of you, not because it wishes to punish, but because it cannot disobey your word. This is why so many teachings about budgeting, planning, and financial strategy fail to produce peace. The numbers may change, but the name does not. And by name, I do not mean what others call you. I mean the inner self you bow to before you speak. The subconscious character who decides how much you can have, how long it can stay, and whether or not you're worthy to receive without guilt. If you have been speaking from the identity of someone barely surviving, then everything you spend will carry the vibration of survival, not command. And survival never multiplies. It only recycles. It pulls just enough. It gives only under pressure. It asks without expectation. And the law, being obedient, mirrors this cycle perfectly. But I have also seen the opposite. I have seen those with modest means spend with dignity, not arrogance, not delusion, but dignity. They speak from a name higher than their history. They say, I am under grace. What I release returns to me multiplied. And the law listens, because the law recognizes those who speak from spiritual alignment, not fear-based logic. You may ask me, how do I know what identity I'm spending from? The answer is simple. Watch how you speak. Watch what you expect. Watch the tone of your internal voice when money is involved. Do you brace yourself before you check the price? Do you tell others, I'm just trying to get by? Do you say, that's for people like them, not me? If so, you are spending from the name of a stranger, a name that does not belong to the divine inheritance you carry. And until you revoke that name, the law will keep delivering to it. There is no neutral identity. You are either speaking from the self that was assigned by fear, or the self that was awakened by spiritual truth. And whichever one you repeat becomes the one the law records. That record then becomes your financial atmosphere. Not your job, not your effort, but the atmosphere around your speech, the climate of your soul when you act. You cannot speak as a servant and expect the results of a master. You cannot whisper in unworthiness and receive as a steward. The world trains you to beg, to justify, to tone yourself down. But the law does not honor humility that is born of shame. It honors command that is rooted in divine order. And divine order always begins with identity. When Moses asked the divine, "Who shall I say sent me?" the answer was not a title but a vibration. I am. Not I was. Not I will try to become, but I am. That name, spoken in authority, is the key to all provision. And every time you spend, you must ask yourself, from which I am I speaking now? If your I am is weak, conflicted, apologetic, then your money will obey that voice. It will exit nervously. It will arrive with interruption. It will respond like a servant unsure of where to go. But if your I am is rooted, righteous, aligned with grace, then your money will obey as a loyal soldier. It will serve. It will multiply. It will know its place. This is not ego. This is order. You were never meant to spend as a victim. You were never meant to tiptoe through transactions. You were created to issue lawful decrees in the realm of finance, just as you do in faith. You are not a stranger to supply. You are its rightful speaker. But if that voice has been buried beneath years of self-neglect, it must be uncovered. And you uncover it by speaking. Not when you feel ready, but when you choose to believe. Speak the identity before the evidence arrives. For the law does not follow proof, it follows precedent. And the voice that sets precedent becomes the identity the universe responds to. So train your spending, not just in discipline, but in declaration. Train your lips to say, I spend as one who lacks nothing, I give as one who fears no loss, I receive as one who is already authorized. These are not affirmations, they are names. And when you say them long enough, the old name must fall away. You are not broke, you are misnamed, you are not blocked, you are unspoken. And the moment you change the name you speak from, the law will reassign the flow. Not every agreement is signed with a pen. Some are signed with fear, some are signed with exhaustion, some are signed with silence, and yet, every one of them is binding, until revoked. I have watched many souls speak of prosperity, declare abundance, tithe in faith, and still remain stuck in cycles of inexplicable loss. Not because their desire was wrong, and not because their giving lacked sincerity, but because they had made agreements beneath their awareness and never broke them. Agreements that said, you must struggle for every dollar. Agreements that said, we don't talk about money in this family. Agreements that said, if I have more, someone else will have less. Agreements signed not in ink, but in pain. And the law, being precise, honors them all. You must understand, the law does not wait for your conscious intent. It responds to your unspoken structure. And structure is built not only by what you believe, but by what you have absorbed, inherited, repeated, tolerated, and internalized over years of spiritual passivity. If you were raised in a home where lack was spiritualized, where poverty was framed as holiness, where guilt was attached to spending, where sacrifice was praised and enjoyment was suspect, then your subconscious recorded those messages as templates of obedience. And unless you have broken them aloud, clearly and with finality, they are still running. Not because you are weak, but because you are unexamined. The most dangerous agreements are the ones you forgot you signed. The ones you made in childhood while watching your parents fight about money. The ones you made in adolescence when someone told you your dreams were too much. The ones you made in adulthood when a job robbed your time and told you to be grateful. These are not memories. These are covenants. And the law does not expire them until you command it to. I once counseled a woman who could not keep money in her possession for more than a few days. No matter how much came in, it disappeared. She tithed, she affirmed, she gave generously, and still the flow would dry. When I asked her what she remembered about money as a child, she said this: my mother used to cry every time she paid the bills, and my father always said, it never lasts, so don't get used to it. That was the environment in which her nervous system was baptized. And so her adult life mirrored that baptism. The moment money arrived, she spent with dread. Not because she wanted to, but because her subconscious believed not getting used to it was faithful to her origin. Her silence was agreement. Her pattern was obedience. And the law, blameless as always, was simply fulfilling the last known instruction. You must be ruthless in examining these silent contracts. The ones that say, too much is dangerous, or I must give it all away to be spiritual, or I don't want others to think I have changed. These phrases sound innocent, but they are binding. The law takes them as structure. And the longer they remain unchallenged, the more energy they consume, not only financially, but spiritually. If you find yourself consistently almost there, consistently giving more than you keep, consistently sabotaging moments of increase, look not to fate, nor to karma. Look to the voice within you that says it's safer this way. That voice is not God. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is an echo of an old vow made under emotional duress, and it must be broken. How do you break it? Not with analysis, not with resentment, and not with fear. You break it with a louder word, a truer word, a lawful word. You speak aloud. I now revoke every unspoken contract with fear, guilt, and lack. I dissolve every inherited belief that no longer aligns with divine supply. I release every vow made in trauma. I am no longer obligated to survive. I am authorized to prosper. Do not wait until you feel ready. The old agreements were not formed through readiness. They were formed through repetition. And repetition must now become your tool of reversal. Repeat the breaking aloud, daily if you must. Write it, speak it, seal it in your tone, not as a performance but as spiritual surgery. Because this is not semantics. This is structure. You are not under obligation to fulfill the financial fate of your family. You are not bound to mirror the fear of your community. You are not required to downplay your abundance so others feel more comfortable. These are all invisible chains, posing as humility, dressed as modesty, but they are nothing more than silent sabotage. The law does not judge your motive. It only enacts your vibration. And if that vibration contains even a whisper of, I should shrink, it will obey. This is why the spiritual student must become bold. Not brash, but bold. Bold enough to identify when the voice in your head is not your own. Bold enough to cancel what others declared over you. Bold enough to say, that is not my agreement. That is not my inheritance. That is not my law. And when the discomfort rises, as it surely will, you do not shrink. You speak louder. You declare, this discomfort is the sound of contracts being burned. For that is exactly what is happening. You are not merely breaking a habit, you are revoking a spiritual treaty. You are stepping out of a name that never belonged to you. And the law, being just, must follow. Speak now, break now, seal now, and never again sign in silence what you would not write in speech. You are not meant to wait for wealth to appear before you speak, as one who possesses it. You are meant to train your tongue to spend first, not in currency but in confidence, not in reaction but in rhythm. You are meant to speak wealth into your atmosphere before your eyes see it, before your hand moves, before a single coin changes place. For the law is not moved by seeing, it is moved by speaking. If your tongue is untrained, your wallet will remain ungoverned. If your voice echoes lack, your environment will respond accordingly. For every transaction in the outer is preceded by a sentence in the inner, and that sentence is never neutral. It either authorizes release or it prepares for loss. I have met many who say they believe in abundance, but when asked to speak aloud their faith, they stammer. Their voice trembles. They qualify every sentence. Well, I hope so. I'm trying. We'll see. These are not phrases of faith. These are delays disguised as humility, and the law hears them as obstruction. Let me tell you what I have seen. When a man's words begin to carry structure, his finances follow suit. When his phrases are lawful, his bank account ceases to leak. When his declarations are made in alignment with divine identity, not emotional grasping, the system obeys. Not overnight, but unfailingly. Because the tongue, once trained, becomes the steering wheel of reality. You must treat your tongue as a legal instrument, not an emotional vent. You must rehearse command, not confession. The law is not moved by how you feel. It is moved by what you say, as if it is already so. And your tone, your cadence, your conviction, these are the true currency of manifestation. How do you train the tongue? First, you stop allowing it to wander. You cease casual phrasing. You retire self-deprecating remarks. You cancel sarcastic commentary about being broke, never catching up, or just surviving. Even in jest, these phrases anchor identity. The law does not care that you were joking. It only cares that you repeated it. Second, you write your decrees. A trained tongue begins with written law. Write the sentences you want your life to obey. Write them slowly. Write them clearly. Write them with the authority of a sovereign issuing command. Then speak them, not once, not sporadically, but rhythmically, until the sound becomes second nature. Third, you attach feeling to form. Your words must not be empty. They must not be performed. They must be felt as already true. When you say, "I release this seed in wealth and it returns multiplied," you must not ask whether it's true. You must embody it as truth before the evidence arrives. That is the law of spiritual instruction. Belief precedes confirmation. Fourth, you correct yourself in real time. The trained tongue is not perfect, but it is responsive. The moment you catch yourself declaring lack, you do not excuse it. You revoke it. You say aloud, "That was not my truth. I cancel that decree. I speak as one under grace." This is not superstition. This is self-governance. And until your tongue is under spiritual command, your money will remain under emotional influence. Let me be clear. Training the tongue is not the same as positive thinking. It is not optimism. It is not cheerfulness. It is legal speech. It is alignment with spiritual jurisdiction. When a judge speaks in court, he does not ask the room to agree. He speaks, and the structure moves. So must you speak, calmly, clearly, with finality. The tongue must learn to spend wealth first. That means, before the money arrives, you already speak as one who is safe. Before the bill comes, you have already established provision. Before the decision is made, you have already declared alignment. You spend not from your bank account, but from your seat in law. You do not say, "I'll see what happens." You say, "Whatever appears, I remain in divine supply." You do not say, "I hope this doesn't ruin me." You say, "Every transaction strengthens my channel." You do not say, "I'm scared to look at the number." You say, "I govern numbers. They do not govern me." And when the world hears you, it may scoff. It may call you delusional. It may accuse you of pretending. But you are not pretending. You are pre-building. The builder does not wait for the building to appear. He declares it by blueprint, by structure, by foresight. Your words are blueprints. Your tone is scaffolding. Your speech is substance. This is not performance. This is prophetic order. Train your tongue to declare, then act. Do not wait for emotion. Do not wait for certainty. Speak as law, and certainty will follow. For when you sound like the law recognizes its own voice. You are not here to spend as the fearful. You are here to speak as the faithful. You are not here to wait for provision to prove itself. You are here to instruct it. Say it now, as one who has trained their tongue in truth. I spend from alignment, not anxiety. I speak wealth first, and I walk in what I have declared. And the law will say, "It is done." There is a moment in every spiritual journey where the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Not because you have run out of declarations, but because your soul has reached legal certainty. In that moment, you no longer issue commands with effort. You no longer speak to convince. You speak once, you seal it, and then you walk on. This is the silent transaction that changes everything. The world teaches you to chase, to monitor, to repeat your request until the world moves. But the law teaches something higher. Once the decree is spoken with spiritual jurisdiction, the system moves even in your silence. I have said it before, you do not speak to persuade the law, you speak to authorize it. Once authorized, the law does not need reminding, it needs agreement. And agreement is demonstrated not by repetition, but by posture. When you walk as though it is done, the silence becomes louder than the speech. The atmosphere becomes the confirmation. You must understand the final movement of wealth is not action, but embodiment. You are not trying to get money to obey you. You are proving that it already does, by how calmly, lawfully, and completely you move after you have spoken. When the tongue is aligned and the decree is sealed, silence is no longer absence. It is confirmation. Many speak the right words, but undo them in the next breath. They say, I am always provided for, and then follow with, but just in case I'll hold back. They say divine supply flows through me, and then whisper, I don't know how this will work out. This is not silence. This is contradiction. And contradiction delays everything. But when your internal voice has been trained, when the transaction has occurred in the unseen, when you have spent wealth first with the tongue, then the silence becomes holy. It becomes the resting place of authority. It becomes the space where the law finishes what your voice began. Let me tell you what silence is not. It is not resignation. It is not avoidance. It is not fear posing as faith. If you have spoken nothing, you are not silent, you are withholding. But if you have spoken clearly, lawfully, with full spiritual command, and then cease to plead, your silence becomes thunder. It shakes the realm. It says the order has already gone out. I do not repeat it. I embody it. This is the stillness of completion. And the law responds to it with precision. You are not here to monitor manifestation. You are here to speak law and live like it already happened. When you pay a righteous expense, you do not look for immediate return. You seal the energy with one sentence. This moves by spiritual structure. Then you stop. You do not double-check. You do not hover. You trust the echo. I have walked through seasons where nothing in appearance matched what I declared. And yet I knew the declaration was enough. I had spoken it not from hope, but from position. And because I did not retract it with anxious speech, it was allowed to unfold unopposed. When the law is not interrupted, it finishes swiftly. That is the final discipline of the tongue. Not just what you say, but what you refuse to say after. You refuse to worry aloud. You refuse to entertain opposing decrees. You refuse to share your process with those who would unravel it with doubt. You enter the silence not as one waiting, but as one sealed. This silence is not passive. It is priestly. It is the temple in which manifestation completes its cycle. If you have trained your words, and if you have spent wealth in vibration, then stop looking for reassurance. Your reassurance is in the fact that you no longer sound like the old name. You no longer speak as one under the dominion of fear. You have graduated from asking to authorizing, from rehearsing to reigning. And this is the essence of spiritual wealth. Not what you possess, but how you position. The wealthy soul speaks once, spends with clarity, and walks forward. The untrained soul speaks many times, spends with anxiety, and waits backward. One is aligned, the other is suspended. You must choose which structure you live by. I ask you now, have you said what needs to be said? Have you declared it with alignment? Have you canceled the old contracts? Have you trained your tongue to speak with wealth before the evidence appears? If so, walk on. Do not explain yourself to fear. Do not echo the voice of delay. Do not retrace your steps for reassurance. Speak once, seal it, walk on, and the law will do the rest.